You're listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers.
Presented by CMH Heli Skiing and Peak Performance.
The Low Pressure Podcast is sponsored by CMH Heli Skiing, where you can choose from 11 unique locations and experiences, including 4, 5, 6, and 7-day signature trips, the brand new single-day trips. You can do small groups with just you, 4 friends, and a guide, or the private and exclusive, where you get the whole place just to yourself. So find your next adventure at cmhheli.com. The Low Pressure Podcast is also sponsored by Peak Performance. There are many ways to make it down a mountain, but the best line is your line. And the adventure is there, so make it yours. Visit peakperformance.com and get the gear to unlock your free ride spirit. We've started.
Now I'm in professional mode.
Are you?
Sort of. I don't know. I'm glad that this is conversational and not like prepped questions.
Well, we've done one before.
Yeah, I know, but I just figured you had questions.
Always have questions, but it's just because I'm naturally inquisitive.
Right.
But I don't write it down.
They're not prepared.
Yeah. This is what I usually show people. These are the questions I've written down for you.
Great.
As you can see, watching on the YouTube.
I don't believe in research either.
Well, I have to do a little bit of research. But you know, I kind of know enough about you because, Cedar girl. Cedar's sitting here. If you're not watching, she's sitting here with her head on Katie's lap. Aww. She's staring at me, being a good dog.
You're so sweet.
I think I was telling you I have some ideas for some Cedar merch.
That's such a good call.
Well, because people are always asking, like, we need more Cedar on. I'm like, well, she doesn't talk. So it doesn't really...
Actually, that would be really funny to do a podcast in the voices of our dogs, because everyone has a dog voice, of course.
Yeah.
And we could just talk like Cedar and Teddy.
Right, Cedar girl? Yeah. And you brought Teddy to Whistler too.
I did bring Teddy to Whistler. One of the worst things about my lifestyle and work is that I travel so much.
Mm-hmm.
And, I shouldn't say that. The worst thing is that I can't bring Teddy everywhere.
You haven't like elevated yourself to like one of those.
He hates flying.
Oh.
Like he hates it, and I think it's because he has trauma from when he flew over from China in cargo.
Oh.
And
can you not bring him on? He's a little guy. Can't you bring him on the plane?
He's a little guy. Yeah. I've flown with him, but he like shakes so hard his whole body vibrates.
Oh, really?
And I've given him various drugs, and he hates it. So I'm like driving 20 hours to places so that I can bring Teddy, because I'm just like, I just want him with me. And
right.
I got to figure out, I've spoken to the vet about it. I've got to figure out a way to be able to fly with him more often so that he can come on more stuff. But like this January, I'm flying all over the place on tour with the film. And I don't know. I'm like, is this stressful for him? Is it more fun for him to be at the lake with his grandma and grandpa?
Does he stay at mom and dad's house?
He does. He spends lots of time with my mom and dad at Sprout Lake, or he stays with Colleen, my right-hand man.
Yeah.
And or he has a very sweet dog sitter as well.
That's nice.
Named Joelle.
Good dogs. There's really no shortage of people that are willing to look after them.
Totally.
For a very limited period of time.
I had to
finite period of time.
I had to like level up into the paid dog sitter space because I was traveling
really
so much. I just travel so much, and it's like 3 days here, 4 days here, 3 days here, and it's just easier for me to know that he's just paid for it, taken care of.
Yeah.
And he has a really nice bond with this woman.
Nice.
And versus asking various friends and
yeah. I buy gas cards.
Oh, that's a nice gift.
Here's $100. If someone's looking after for like a week or two, it's like, hey, here's $150.
That's a good one.
And it's not like it's less. I don't know. I think it's less. It's more. It's not as impersonal as cash.
Yeah.
Because it's still a gift, kind of. You're like, hey, I know you're looking after my dog.
Cash is king.
That's true,
Cash is king. But I got Colleen a perfume set in London from the last dog sit.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some Scandinav passes that are left over from IF3, so I'm saving those ones for this winter's dog sitters. I'll probably still do gas cards and then a Scandinav gift card.
That's such a good call. I should have booked some Scandinav time while I'm here.
Yeah, you should.
Maybe I still will. The weekend's pretty jam-packed schedule-wise, but...
Yeah, so let's get into that. You are here for your first feature film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You've come a long way. For those of you that have been following you on Instagram back in the I'm going to make fun of influencers and then inadvertently become an influencer to little mini films through social media to actual creating little films to creating medium length films to now look at you.
It's pretty it's pretty wild to think about what's actually happened since like 2017 is when I started doing the influencer bit.
Right.
On social media.
I remember when you had like 4,000 or 5,000 followers or something like that. What do you got now?
That must have been that was like 2019.
Oh yeah, even then. What do you have now? Like 70, 80, 100 plus?
No, 95, I think.
100, you're like, no.
Well, the 100 to me is
95.
In my head, it's like a thing.
You'll have that by the end of like the first probably 2 months of this film being released. Maybe sooner.
I wonder.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think once it hits streaming, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with streaming.
Right. So, okay, you brought up a few things, and I have to because I
compartmentalize.
For those of you that know me personally, I go on these like corn maze tangents. Where I'll start with the topic and I'll go on 5 or 6 different mazes and then I'll end up back where I was initially trying to go after like several detours. So
you need like software management or software.
I need an intern.
Program manage. What's
like a CRM?
Yeah, you need like project management software to control these conversations.
Yeah, I need like a screen over there that's going to be like, talk about this, and then a 5-minute countdown, and then be able to reset it if I can. All right, so we're talking about your career. We're going to cover the whole thing.
Right.
And here are those questions. I actually wrote down a lot of questions. I was just fucking with you.
Oh, really?
No, I'm screwing with you again. All right. So last time you were on the show, we were in Austria.
Yeah, right. Working on Coach.
Yeah, which turned out really, really well. And I listened to a little bit of it just on the way to go pick you up. I'm like, I should probably just scroll through a few little things. And you were kind of talking about kind of the things you're learning and the challenges about doing that sort of a project, which was, I guess, different from this one, because that's kind of, like you said, even in the trailer for Coach, it's like more of like reality TV.
Yeah. Because
you're following around real people doing real things, and like that's a lot of work. Whereas this is probably full-on written script you spent years on. Everything's kind of in place. Like, maybe speak on the differences and like the development of like your learning through those two.
Well, interestingly enough, when we were in Austria working on Coach, that was February, and we got sent home in March.
Right. Not long after that, right?
There was they had to cancel the final stop in Verbier that year, and while we were in Austria, we got a call from Jared Drake and Steven Sigg, the producers at Realization Films, about wanting to shoot a feature together, or wanting to do a feature together, or being curious if I had a feature.
Because by then
they had seen Dream Job.
Dream Job too.
They saw Dream Job and they liked what they saw.
Right.
And then we started working on Coach shortly after Dream Job released, and Coach. I mean, the biggest thing about Coach was it was like wildly under-resourced, and it was just Colleen and I.
Yeah. And
Hedvig and Lorraine were focused on their various, 8 jobs each that they had.
Yeah.
And so Colleen and I were really like a 2-man film crew, and I don't operate cameras.
Right.
So it was all on Colleen to shoot the whole thing. She had to be, she was like 3 people.
Yeah. She's a wizard.
She is. And she was boot packing up to this thing, skiing down here, running into here, chasing. It was just wild. And then, I mean, in terms of like going from that to getting sent home to sitting down in March 2020 or April 2020 and just starting to work on the outline for Week Layers to try to secure the opportunity with Jared and Sig and Realization, because they were shopping to various writers, like LA-based legit screenwriters, et cetera, and so I started working on the outline for this movie in 2020, and Colleen and I then decided for me to move into her house to edit Coach, because everyone had to be in a bubble,
right?
And I was living in Vancouver at the time, and Colleen was in Revelstoke. So I moved back to Revelstoke, moved into Colleen's house. We didn't have any cash flow from March until September, and we just lived on
Just shoestring.
like literally visas and edited Coach.
Yeah.
And then started making a little bit of cash in September when I started getting like jokes influencer work.
Right.
And I started making like comedy influencer content, and that started paying for, sorry, I stopped petting you for a moment. And that started paying for our lives and like crawling out of this debt hole that we were in because of Coach.
Doing those little influencer spots.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And so Weeklairs, it was really touch and go about whether or not we'd actually secure the opportunity, because I'm as far as Hollywood's concerned, no name director, no name actor,
right.
first timer, no real credits in that narrative space. And so I really had to like sell them on the fact that I could make it authentic, which was a huge thing for them.
Right.
And throughout this entire process, like I've said hundreds of times, this has to feel like a movie that like the ski industry made a movie for Hollywood, not Hollywood made a movie
right.
for the ski industry
right.
or for skiing. Because when you watch Hollywood ski movies, they're always like carrying their skis wrong and like whatever it is. And the snow looks fake. And actually, I mean, the whole snow thing is a whole thing, but we got so blessed.
So lucky.
Yeah, we got so lucky.
I've been like downtown, like Coquitlam, like a suburb of Vancouver, out by the courthouse once. And it was the middle of like summer, and I come around the corner and it was Christmas. They had like full on like
snow blankets.
Yeah, I was like, what is
fake
happening?
Snow machines.
And I never even had considered anything like that, but you didn't have to, fortunately.
We had rented $5,000 worth of snow blankets, and the guys had gotten a rental snow machine as well.
Right.
And something happened in Tahoe this is same time last year.
It just nuked.
It was nuts. And it was November and early December, and it was snowing like apocalyptic levels, and then we'd have to like shoot something at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday, and it would just go blue. Like, I kid you not, I'm like, Shane McConkey, like there were Tahoe like spirits that were at work while we were shooting this thing.
Well, maybe they knew, right? Like, I was thinking about that too, because I remember there was a scene where the dude was just like shoveling, and you're walking down the street. I'm like, that doesn't happen.
It was like in November.
Yeah, it
was nuts. Anyway, and then to think about it, if we were shooting this year or the year before, like it all would have had to be snow blanketed. The only shot that we used the fake snow machine for is the shot where my character is showing her film and looking up and having her moment. I'm like, I feel like this podcast, like you've seen the movie. So it's like, we should talk about it. Like, okay, so people have seen it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely. I watched it last night, and I wasn't sure because there's a lot of things I think about, because obviously ski industry. So there's a lot of little bits and pieces that I like to pay attention to. But whenever I watch films or listen to a podcast or watch anything, I always like to think about how it's being made. I think that's why I ended up being good at this, is because I'm inquisitive about the process. The process, absolutely. So I was like, okay, do I ask questions about the film, but I don't want to give too much of it away, because we want people to go watch it. Right. But also I'm interested about the process as well. So like, I don't know, we can get into all of it, really. Cool. So why don't we? So okay, let's finish let's finish the process story. So these guys reached out to you.
Yeah, so they reached out while we were. So my point was we were in Austria when they had reached out, and it was like 9 p.m. We were drinking Aperol spritzes. They called. They're like, "We saw Dream Job. We'd love it." Like we set up this call, and they were like, "Do you have a feature?" And I'm like,
"Of course I do."
I like looked at Colleen. I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, of course."
Was it just like a random number, and you're like, who's this?
No. They reached out via email and set up to Colleen, and then set up a call, and we got on the phone with them, and they just sort of were telling us how they were just like, let's make another Aspen Extreme or a hot dog or a hot tub time machine or an out
Right.
cold. Like, we haven't had one of those in a few years. Like, would you guys have any interest in doing that? And we
Right.
were like, hell yes.
Yes.
Hell yes. And so when I got home from Fever Brew and I started working on the outline and we were sort of putting together like pitch decks and et cetera, concept,
Yeah.
concepting for these guys. And we ended up getting the green light from them on it. And so then there was, a whole conversation around how it gets written, who writes it, et cetera. And they wanted me to write a first draft. And there was a whole conversation about, is it a spec? Is it this? There's all this stuff I was learning about how you even engage somebody on a contract basis as a writer, because I had so I have an undergrad and then I went to UCLA in 2018 to do a master's I was going to do a diploma and then parlay that into a master's in screenwriting.
Okay.
So they have like this program you can get into at UCLA that's called UCLA Extension.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can parlay that into their actual programs.
Yep.
So I went down and I did one semester in the fall of 2018. And then Colleen got financed to make, I don't know what it was. Oh, it was Dream Job. Sorry. And so I came home and I started working on Dream Job and I did 2 more courses online, but I didn't finish my diploma.
Right.
So I had this like super basic first semester screenwriting,
Yeah.
And so these guys are like, can you write the script? I'm like, just like fake it till you make it. Right. I'm like, yep. Totally.
Right.
So they asked for the first draft to be submitted in February of 2021, or like end of January 2021.
So you got about 9 months.
6 or 7.
6 or 7 months. Yeah. Right.
So I put it off for, 5.5 months because I was like, I don't know how to do this. And we had so much other shit going on
Right.
with COVID and Coach and trying to crawl out of this $30,000 debt hole, which I've told this story, I feel like 100 times, but it's like, I got into so much debt on Coach because I just was like, we just have to finish it.
Just got to do it.
And I had quit my 9 to 5. I always had like a safety.
Right.
And anyway, so I'm like, I'm gonna lock myself in the basement. I'm gonna put together this first draft of this movie at Colleen's house. Lock myself in the basement. 2 weeks later, have this first draft that is like, it's like a melted screenplay. Do you know what I mean? Like it was not a real screenplay.
It's kind of like a rough idea outline.
Totally.
To brainstorm.
Yes. And I like had the software and I knew how to use the software at a very basic level because of the program. And
What, like Word?
No.
Writing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Google Docs. Final draft. And I put together this first draft and I sent it to them and they were like, we appreciate you hitting the deadline. And then they read it.
Which you're like, that doesn't happen? No.
No, I guess not. They loved the characters. They loved the humor. They loved the authenticity. They loved the jokes. They loved the
Right.
general gist, but they could tell that I wasn't a professional screenwriter.
Right.
And to do something at this level, obviously. And they were really gracious about it. They were like really nice. They were like, hey, how do you feel about us connecting you to? I was like, yes, please get a screenwriter on this. Like, yes. And so they connected me to Andrew Ladd, who had done work with them before. And he's like, a career screenwriter. Mm-hmm. And he and I got on the phone in March of 2021 and started. He just asked questions. He was like, what about this? What about this? And his experience and sense of structure and sensibility for story. And also like he was an ex ski racer. And so he had like a real understanding of the ski industry. And
Right.
He loved the characters, but he also had a mind for budget. He's like, can we just kill one of these girls? Originally it was 4 girls.
Oh, right.
And then it became 3. He's like, that just saves us, That's
Yep.
a line item right there. And there was a heli rescue and he was like, can we make it a toboggan rescue? You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
And then he took my sort of 75-page brainstorm of jokes and people and really like honed it and developed it and turned it into a screenplay. And we had so much fun. Like he would be like, okay, here's a structure. And then like, I would go nuts, just like dialogue and jokes and whatever, and we'd go riff back and forth, and we had to turn that around really quickly. We had the like official V1 over to Jared and Sig by June, end of June, and because we thought we were going to shoot that fall.
Oh yeah.
And COVID continued to delay us, and then we were going to shoot that winter, and then COVID delayed us, Omicron or whatever, and then we finally got it together to go to camera in the fall of 2022. So all like to get to camera you're already looking at 2 years.
Right.
And then as far as post has gone, so I mean, shooting the thing was incredible. It was like,
well, let's get to that in a minute. So before we get to that,
okay.
I want to know, did you have to go on Google and be like, because you said you already had the basic outline for learning how to write a script.
Sure.
First semester, but are you sitting down there going, oh crap?
Oh yeah, I was like,
are you going online and looking at other scripts, how they're written, and being like, I'm just going to copy this structure? And
yeah, I mean, I had taken plot structure 101 or whatever it was. Right. So I knew a basic arc.
First act, second act, third act.
I knew a basic arc that had to go into it. But as soon as I got going, I was going off of the outline that they had greenlit. Mm-hmm. And so I was just trying to take the outline and put it into the script. And
right.
There's such a jump from an outline to a script that happens, having now written another script.
Oh, we have another one in the bank?
I do, yeah.
Ooh,
with Evan Jonikite, who was my co-star in Week Layers.
Okay.
He
love interest?
Yes.
Yeah.
He and I were like, let's do something, and so we wrote a script.
Oh.
But having been in the process now again, the jump from the outline to the actual first, second, third act, I'm like, okay, this is again what Andrew was doing in Week Layers, and this is how he was pulling,
right.
These moments to hit these.
So you were you're doing the practical application for your second and third and fourth semesters.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'm like, I mean, that's a whole argument in and of itself. It's like,
where
do you learn?
Do you go to film school or do you make a movie? Right.
You make a movie.
Right.
In my opinion, even if you're making it on your iPhone.
Right.
And or some shitty camera you get off Craigslist, you make it. And I will say, now having been, I mean, I don't have a ton of experience, but I used to work in commercials in Vancouver, and my EP, I was an executive producer's assistant, and I asked him the same question. I was like, how am I going to get ahead? I'm going to be your assistant for a few years. What else am I going to do? And he would send me out to set and stuff to get experience, but he was like, just start making shit, because there was a culture in Vancouver, and I don't know if this is everywhere, but there's a culture in Vancouver in particular where the crews didn't like the student bravado. So the VFS kids would come out of school
think of their shit don't stink.
Exactly.
Right.
And they'd come with their resumes. Here's the 4 things I did during school, and they'd be like, go fucking run water to the talent.
Yeah.
Fuck off. Do you know what I mean?
Make sure it's 68 degrees exactly.
Exactly.
Or they'll throw it in your face.
Yeah, can you move these can you move these tables over there?
Yeah.
Did you learn that in school? It becomes such a different process when you're actually
doing something.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't go to film school. I don't know.
Right.
And I know I think other people would argue it was hugely beneficial for them. I will say the DP on Week Layers, he's a Tisch grad, and our gaffer is a Tisch grad. And
what's Tisch?
It's the New York
film school.
New York University Film School. It's their adjunct
right.
campus or whatever. These people are unbelievably knowledgeable, and they know the ins and outs and ups and downs of absolutely everything. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely working at a disadvantage here of just not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get so much experience to be on the same level as those guys, just from a knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You kind of need
base.
both on a set, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You need a little bit of experience, a little bit of knowledge, kind of everybody in the melting pot to make a successful product.
Personally, I would like to go get more training
right
now,
because there's probably things. Because I do the same thing with podcasts, right? I was just talking to you about lighting this room.
Yeah.
Right. Or
totally.
The other day I needed a logo adjusted. I don't have any idea how to do that. So I call a friend, or I call Fiverr, or do whatever, you know what I mean? There's those little things that if I knew just the basic first 20% of how to do, I can get so much more accomplished. And that's kind of the same thing where I'm sure there's so much where you're like, I just wish I knew a little bit more about the foundation of this process.
Yeah.
And then I can understand how it works, and then I can pass it off, or I can at least get it started and then give it to somebody.
Totally.
You
Or
know?
you have to have people like genuinely take interest in you developing and mentor you.
Right.
I will say, like, on set of Weeklayers, I really did my best to just show up and be like, okay, I'm not gonna blow smoke up anyone's ass here. I'm gonna just tell you guys straight up, I'm the least experienced person on the set.
Right.
And I have arguably two of the biggest jobs.
Right.
And I know less than all of you.
Yeah.
So
when I need you, help me out. But if I'm telling you to do something, I need that coffee 68 degrees.
yeah. But it was like, I needed actually, and wanted the process to be collaborative.
Right.
And
that's great too, because you get those people that are, in the, assistant director positions or grips or whomever. And if you're like, hey man, like, I'm stoked that you're here. I appreciate you being here. I want to learn from you. They're going to give that much more because they feel valued.
Yeah.
Right?
I think for sure everyone, I mean, the most spectacular thing on a film set is just how passionate everyone is about their very specific job.
Right.
And how skilled they are. And if you can lean on them and empower them to just show up at their highest,
Yeah.
you get so much more.
It's another one of those cliches, right? You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to surround yourself with the smartest people in the room.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And being a director, and I don't know, like, again, I've directed shorts and short films and commercial content, brand content, but never a feature. And I was also on camera. So I had to just make sure that the people around me I also really trusted.
Right.
And I could look to any of them at various points throughout and just be like, are we getting this? Is this right? Can we talk about this for a second? For me, it would be like a feeling. I'd be like, something's wrong over here.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what it is.
Because you're a producer. You're a natural producer deep down. When you can see something, I feel like I'm kind of the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Where if I'll see something, like I can't, if I have an idea in my head of something that I want, let's just say for like an image, right? Or something that it's being filmed. I can look at it like just like you're alluding to, and you're like, there's something not right about this.
Yeah.
But for me to take it from my brain and put it on the page, I can't start drawing it. But if I can explain to someone what it is, as soon as I see it, whether it's what I had in my head or not, as soon as I see it, I'm like, oh, this needs to go here. This needs to go here. Change that color 4 shades more purple. Right. And it's just the producing and the adjustments to make it look right. And that's kind of what I think you can do really, really well as well.
Yeah. And just like having just back and forths with a few key people, like Ryan DeFranco, my DP, obviously, Jared, the producer, one of the producers, Colleen, obviously, and Andrew, like just, having them as just bounces,
right?
Or something's bumping for me, can we adjust this? I don't know. They always had ideas.
Yeah.
Is it this? Is it this? Is it this?
Right.
Oh yeah, that's it. Boom.
And then the amount you must have learned from these people is unreal.
It's ridiculous. Like I mean, I feel like I've been drinking out of a fire hose for 2 years. And we had this running joke, Colleen and I, where people would like, there's so much like lingo in film and like terms and roles and titles, and I would do this thing where I'd whisper to Colleen, like, what's a dicopter? Or like, what's a second AC? Or just all these various things that obviously the director should know everything. And I'd turn to Colleen with like cheeky look on my face and be like, what's a gaffer? Like, we just had this joke throughout the whole thing, and tried to kind of make it like just neutralize that, because I feel like if I had tried to fake it would have been awful to be around, because who wants to who wants to be led by someone like that, first of all?
Right.
And then second of all, like,
If you call yourself out, they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah,
She's there's no pretense here.
I'd rather call
She's-
my bluff than have
yeah.
someone else call it.
She's
you know?
not like her influencer persona at
thank
all.
God.
But you know what I mean? Well,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Like,
Yeah.
I think about that process. I'd love to pick your brain like for like hours, but I want to keep going a little bit
Yeah,
farther.
let's have a 2-hour low pressure podcast.
All right, cool. Well, you got to be out of here at 1, so you'll have to come back after. Let's see what I got. There's so much.
Just
It's
whatever.
written and directed. Obviously, we went through all that kind of stuff.
Co-written.
Co-written.
And I
right.
would say group directed.
Group directed. Yeah. Committee directed by committee.
Committee directed.
Directed-
Actually, Spike Lee puts that,
Does he?
puts Spike Lee in team.
Spike Lee joint, right?
Yeah.
When you see his things, it's
Yeah.
Spike Lee joint.
Yeah, Spike Lee joint. And then there's another, maybe it's not Spike Lee that does it, but there's another one that does, is it Spike Lee?
Spike
Spike
Jones?
Jones.
Spike Jones is like
You're
the
definitely gonna have to cut this part out.
Spike. Oh, whatever. This is the fun part. This is the good part. This shows that you're human, Katie
the
Burrell.
part that is it Spike Lee or Spike Jones? Is it Spike Lee Jones?
No, Spike Jones is the guy that did like
They're two different guys.
like Three Kings, and he does like some skate stuff, and he did
Who am I
he
thinking
did
of?
that, you know, that dancing video with Christopher Walken and the
Sure. But my point is that one of them,
yeah,
if it's not two different guys,
there's two different guys. Spike
it's two different guys. So one of them, or maybe it's somebody else entirely. I don't know. I shouldn't have used because if I wasn't sure about the reference, I shouldn't have used it. But
how many directors are named Spike?
one of them says Spike Lee and team, or Spike Jones and team. Like they put that.
Right.
It's and like at the end of Week Layers, it goes directed by Katie Burrell, and I'm always like, and
Yeah.
and Anna, my editor, and Evan.
Right.
Who
Are you on
had-
the mic during the
exactly, and Colleen, who was on monitor, and Jared, who had ideas about XYZ, and Andrew, who was also script supervising, and
Right.
Ryan DeFranco, who was catching plot holes left and right because he's behind the camera the whole time. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
everybody was so collaborative and helpful, and it was, you know,
Let me ask you this. Now that it's finished and it's wrapped and it's being screened,
yes.
are you kind of like a musician writing a song, or someone that looks at it and is like, I want to change this now. I want to add this. I want to get better. Because as you've developed as a director
Mm-hmm.
and a writer, do you get to that point where you're like, okay, this is what I did when I had the abilities that I had then, and now that you've kind
Yeah.
of still developed, are you looking at it being like, oh, I would have changed that. I want to change that. Like I would do that differently.
There's that whole conversation around like everything is unfinished.
Everything's unfinished.
You know, I think the biggest thing for me is just the letting go.
Yeah.
You
Are you
know?
able to do that?
Yeah.
Are there any parts of this film where you're like,
You know
"Ugh,
what? I did the best I could with what I had.
awesome.
And I've had to make peace with that because I was banged up for months. Over it. Yeah. And particularly in the post process. You know, I got down to LA in March to start working with Anna, who's Anna Rocky is my editor. And the first editor's cut I saw in March. I was watching dailies in January, February. The first pass of the dailies, I was like,
What's the daily?
it's like all of the raw footage.
what's a daily?
What's a daily? Exactly. I was watching all the dailies. We didn't have time to watch them during production.
Right.
So I watched them in January, February. And the first pass, I'm like, oh my fucking God, I hate myself.
Because you're watching yourself.
Watching myself.
Yeah.
And then the second pass, I'm like, okay, you're not so bad, but I don't like this.
Right.
Or third pass, you watch it, you're like, oh, never mind. We don't even have the movie we thought we went out to shoot.
Right.
Fourth pass, you're like, okay, I can kind of see which takes I like and which takes will bone it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so you go through this like grieving process just in there.
Yeah.
And then you get into the editor's pass. And when I saw the first editor's pass, I was working with Evan at the time on our new script. And I came downstairs and I was like smiling. And he's like, oh, she likes it. She sees it. And I'm like, I see it. It's there.
Yeah.
We have something.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to turn out like, but we have something.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I got down to LA in March. We started working almost every day together. Or I would like leave Anna for a couple of days with a bunch of notes, and she's incredible. Like, yeah, she's a truly incredible editor, has like a real eye for things. But there'd be versions of it where we'd watch it in just silence and look at each other and be like, this sucks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I hate that. There was a scene where every time it played, I was like, I hate this scene. And then she's like, you know what? Let's rebuild this entire scene.
Right.
And we went back to the absolute foundation on it. And you're like, throw away the script. Let's do it differently.
Did you have to do reshoots and stuff?
We did a reshoot for the film within the film.
Right.
So, which, I think it's more like retrospectively, there's a lot of lessons I learned that I will take to the next one. Like, one, don't try to land your ship with a ship, like landing a film with holding a film together, like the movie within the movie thing,
right?
That trope or like that style is actually a really difficult thing to do.
Right.
And we chose to do that, Andrew and I. And, we loved the idea of the nobodies and we thought it was really fun.
Well, let's before we get to that, let's actually talk about.
We are all over the place.
Yeah, no, we're doing really well.
Software project management.
No. I love it. No, but let's talk about the film itself and kind of the concept of it. So, explain if you can give me like the Cole's notes or if someone's like, what's your film about?
I didn't answer your question about if I would do things differently.
Doesn't matter. We'll get there.
Okay.
Well, I'll tie it all back in.
So what'd you say? What was my question?
Yeah, like what's the film? So when people are like the trailer's out.
Yeah.
And then so just right there we started getting into kind of what some of the concepts within the film are. Well, let's kind of give that outlet, that layout.
Sure.
Because it's good. I liked it last night. So like you said, it's a ski film.
Yeah.
From the perspective of like skiers. I watched this and I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like you've got a lot of really great ski people in the film.
Cameos, great cameos.
So many good cameos.
Yeah.
Not only Teddy. Your dog.
Johnny Mosley, JT Holmes, Scott Gaffney.
Amy Ingebrigtsen.
Todd Laguerre.
I think one of the funniest parts.
Michelle Parker, Cody Townsend, Elise Ogstad.
One of the funniest parts. There's two funny parts in there that I thought I laughed out loud, and maybe because I know them. The Cody Townsend, like
key toss.
The 10 seconds that Cody's in the film, I laughed out loud.
It's a great cameo.
That's kind of like he's getting typecast because that's what he's kind of like his character in the Mom's movie. Here, hold my kid, which is super funny. And then Connery, I laughed out loud at that one line that he has
when he shushes Gabe.
Yeah.
But you know what the Easter egg there is? He was Evan's stunt double.
Yeah.
So all of Evan's skiing is Connery.
Right.
Or all of Gabe's skiing is Connery.
Right.
And so we put Connery beside Evan in this final, moment of screening the Gabe movie where they're watching Gabe ski. And, Gabe is supposed to be like the hottest, coolest guy in skiing, most famous skier. Everybody knows him. He disappears for 3 years after the death of his girlfriend, and like lost her to an avalanche that, and maybe may or may not have like it was like a big rumor. Maybe he triggered it.
Yeah.
It's pretty like touchy stuff as far as like actual ski.
It's very like
jokes.
It's
to
very
the bone. It's bone.
Yeah, it's very
to
like
the bone jokes.
If you live in a ski town, it's a movie for us.
Totally.
You really nailed it. Like I was thinking, I'm like, all right, there's a hot tub scene. I'm like, is this where the tits come out? Is she like,
right.
is that something that's going to happen?
They didn't pay me enough to see my tits.
No, that's right. You still got a bikini though, which was good for you. Couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had the morning after scene, right?
Yeah. Bra.
Yeah. Full on. Was that nerve-wracking for you? Jump around
for sure. Yeah. I had never really done like a hookup, make out scene.
Right.
I had like done on-screen kisses before, but not like a proper one.
You guys are getting into it.
Yeah. But Evan made me feel extremely comfortable.
He's a handsome man too.
He's like a pro.
Yeah.
Like he's done lots of it, and it's choreographed. It's fully choreographed.
Right.
You're like, okay, we hit. Like you're literally marking it like you'd go mark like a Latin.
This is where we like
dance.
Run into the table.
Totally.
You want your hand here, and then this here.
Exactly. And it's like super. Yeah, and there's like a PA in the bathroom who's holding the door and then diving as you go by so that the door opens slightly so the light hits us as we move past this sequence, like so the DP can walk by. Like there's so much coordinating. The boom is like moving around with you. Like it's it was actually really fun. It wasn't like and then and as far as like showing my body goes, like I was nervous and I was beating myself up about whatever, my orthopedic surgery scar on my shoulder and whatever it is, like thinking I look fat here or bad here or this angle, you know, I don't really have a chin. Maybe we could just like angle this differently, whatever it is. Like, and then you're like, zoom out on it and you're like, is it more important for me to look the best I can possibly look at all times for society at large? Or is it more important for me to just look like a person hooking up?
Like a person.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like,
and that
okay.
adds to the authenticity of it, I think, too, right? For people that don't know you or don't know ski industry stuff, like that's going to add to the authenticity of the film.
Right.
Like we just said, when you look at something and you know something's off or something's not right.
Yeah.
Right? Like everything that was kind of within that film, obviously it's a little camp, right?
Totally.
Because it's a film, but it makes sense to me, having lived in a ski town for majority of my life. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, this isn't a hot dog. This isn't an Aspen Extreme. It's like, oh, this is actually funny and relatable. And this is actually what life is.
It's like more real than those kind of movies, I think, which was kind of our, like, you know, we talk about like, you're like, oh, what's the elevator pitch? It's like, oh, it's a resurrection of the ski comedy, but in an authentic take from the like female side of the,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, female point of view. Right.
And we're just hoping that it ages a little bit better because
than the other ones.
Because those are like wildly problematic now. If you go, I mean, everything is in today's climate.
That's full on 80s though, right? Like that. Yeah. Those movies, they are what they are, and they represent like a snapshot in time for filmmaking. But
it's like we have party scenes. You know, we have like a love story. We have like friends fucking up. We have like chicks hooking up with dudes in dish pits, like whatever it is, you know what I mean? And we just were like, let's just make this, as close to the bone as possible without, while still having like, you know, 3 acts.
Yeah. And it was good. So it's kind of see if I can do this pitch. It's like a story of 3 friends who get kicked out of their place, and there is a film competition, kind of like a Deep Winter,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
It's called Hotlaps.
Yeah,
I liked your names that you came up with this stuff. It's called Hotlaps, and you're like, all right, we need to get some money in order to like get a place to live.
Yeah,
and then you've got these 2 friend roommates who
10 years younger,
and they're not super reliable, and they're just living like the ski bum, like, I just moved to town, I'm gonna party and have a good time lifestyle.
One of them is like your absolute bro dog.
Yeah.
You know, she's just like good time gal.
Yeah.
And then the other is just crashed at the Olympics.
Right.
And lost her career, her sponsors, and she's been trying to be a ski racer, professional ski, like high level ski racer for her entire life. And it's like, fuck this, I'm just gonna party.
Right.
So she's having like a renaissance.
Right. And then your character is the kind of the glue that's trying to keep them together. You're like the mom of the group.
Totally.
The mom of the group. Hey, we need to find a place to live.
Yep.
The littles. I would have liked to see like maybe a side project, a spin-off of the gay ex-boyfriend.
Oh, isn't he great?
Yeah. Was that line
Ross.
that Gabe had? Yeah, I had a beer with him. He's a good dude. Yeah. And so you kind of planted these seeds, and I'm like, oh, that's your sequel.
Right. Wait, what do you think the sequel is?
I don't know. I'd like the sequel to kind of focus more on your relationship with the ex-boyfriend, who you like, kind of like, because he pops up at very specific times, and they're good. They're good to keep the story moving.
Yep.
But you didn't go too in depth.
We didn't.
For you to still be like, hey, what's the deal with that? Like, what's happening? What happened there?
Yeah.
How are they still this good friends?
Yeah.
This new guy meets the other guy. Like, that's kind of like this super like background subplot that I was paying attention to.
It's a good subplot
that I'd like to find out more about personally.
I mean, I feel like the central joke of that is that he's been in the closet for, you know, majority of his adult life because he lives in a ski town and there's not really like an openly comfortable queer community in a lot of ski towns. And shout out to Ryan Collins' People Like Us film, changing that narrative. But so he comes out to the person that's closest to him, which is his girlfriend and best friend. And they've been dating for like a year and a half. and friends. I mean, the prep on all this stuff, you do all this prep as like, you know, the characters and
Story
whatever.
backgrounds
yeah,
and
I'm
like history and stuff.
I always imagined him, he was like, you know, he's a mechanic and fixes all these vehicles, and hence the van that he gives us to live in. And I worked at a bar. He always come to the bar. We're buddies, right? We'd go skiing together, and then the next thing you get loaded one night and you just hook up.
Yeah.
And then you're just dating.
Right.
Kinda.
Mm-hmm.
But with his schedule and my schedule, I'd come home really late nights with bartending. He'd get up really early. We just like didn't really have sex.
That's the story that you wrote for the two of you?
That's the story the prep I did.
Right,
so it was
in your
like,
head, yeah.
we had sort of like a non-sexual friendship relationship.
Yeah, it's like we're a couple, but it's all of the support that everybody needs, but
Yeah.
with none of the, you know.
It's not really a spicy, sexy relationship.
Yeah.
And so I can't really be mad at him.
Yeah.
I'm hurt.
Right.
But I can't really be mad.
And you're still being like, well, I'm mad, but I'm not super mad because like I still need you.
Yeah, and I still need you, and you're still my best friend.
Right.
And so yeah, and then I was nervous about that. I was nervous about, you know, the opening line of the film. I was nervous about getting skewered for saying like, oh, the gay guy's the bad guy. He's the
I personally thought it was great because you're entering the film and it's not like this is this person and this is this person and this is this. You weren't stepping up the stairs like introducing characters as if we're not an intelligent audience. You're like, as soon as you start the film, wow, these are in-depth characters. There's already this massive backstory that we don't know about, and you get right into it and you're like, okay, these characters and this story is believable because in 2 or 3 paragraphs, there's already this huge backstory and history that you're alluding to. You're like, oh, so okay, cool. Like, what's happening with this? So already with that, you're like, all right, these are in-depth characters, and that's all you had to do is create this quick little backstory.
Yeah,
that was my first thought when I watched it. I was like, oh, very cool.
Yeah, we're just in it.
You're in it. Yeah, you're like kind of jumping it partway through the middle.
Yeah,
right?
it was like a ballsy.
It happened quick.
It's a ballsy start, and we debated that opening scene between Jared, Andrew, myself, and Anna for we have like 18 iterations of that opening scene, and I'm really glad that we went back to how it was written in the end, because we were like, oh, you know, we gotta warm people up and get them into it, and I had done like a riff, you know,
and I prefer that you didn't.
I'm glad we didn't.
I'm glad you jumped right into it because you're like, okay, we're here.
The
What's
train
happening?
leaves the station as soon as the bumper basically ends, and you have to just be tracking.
Yeah, just get into the story, right? Don't waste too much time building it up, because I found a lot of films, they take forever to get into the meat. Yeah. Where you're like, all right, we're getting into it right now. This is what's happening.
I prefer that as an audience member, so it was like, that's what we wanted to accomplish as well. I will say, like, having like hated the movie for so long, it has been like so much fun watching it with an audience, which is ultimately what you do it for,
right?
In the beginning.
So that's another thing I had in my head as questions, like when you finally get to watch it in front of a crowd and you get that welling of pride and happiness or fear or fear and stress and dread, but like what surprised you in the films? Like, are there parts where people are laughing and you're like, I did not expect that to happen? Or you're like, oh, here's going to come a big fat laugh and it just falls flat?
I mean, the fact that there were laughs at all, I was like, oh, right. They're seeing it for the first time. I laughed the first time I watched it. The 250th time I watched it, I was like, this is so hack and humiliating. But do you know what I mean? Like, you as your earlier question, how would you do things differently? Everything. You know what I mean? Like, but you don't ever have that luxury in life,
right? When
you're publicly learning, which is what I refer to a filmmaking career
publicly learning.
Yes, public learning. Because it's like, you know, the stuff that Colleen and I did with Dream Job, and then it's like, oh God. Like,
but those are very different films, right?
Do you know what I mean? Like, you just constantly like,
it's all learning. It's a learning process. So yeah, is there like a specific spot within the film where like you gotta laugh and you're like, I did not like that.
I will say, like, the final scene. So I will say, like,
on the chairlift,
the final scene on the chairlift.
I like that. So if I can interject,
totally.
I love
how like excited you are about it. It's
I like
fun.
this. Well, see, I like I said, I like seeing what people do creatively, and I see it as I always analyze them like, that's a cool part that they did there, or that I would have done that a little different. And I'm always kind of analyzing
Interesting.
the time and space you gave on the chairlift.
Of not talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, perfect.
It's fun,
Like
right?
it's you created this like awkward tension, but comedic. It was funny,
Right.
but awkward and tense at the same time. And I was like, I think it lasted just the right amount of time with that lady in between you. Like I was, it was really well done.
The lady in between us was also our wardrobe
nice
person.
Get in here. What's her name?
Robin.
Get in here, Robin. Yeah.
She's so great.
Did they I'm assuming, I guess I just answered my own question in my head. Obviously they shut the chair was just for you and for filming.
Yeah, Palisades.
It wasn't like you're just doing laps and as soon as you came around you're like, all right, we're back on it. And then record again.
No, Palisades gave us use of that chair from opening, or like just slightly before opening, until about noon that day.
Oh, nice.
And we had 2 scenes to shoot that day. We had the chairlift scene, and then we had the final scene.
Right.
Like the final scene of the movie at the top. And I don't want to give it away too much, but so Ryan was rigged up 2 different ways. He was rigged up on a chair ahead of us, and then he was rigged up for our overs. So it was like, but we didn't have the chance to do overs because there was a 3-person chair.
What's overs?
What's an over? So it's like where you shoot over the person's shoulder that's interacting.
Oh, right.
So that it would be like over my shoulder looking at Evan, or over Evan's shoulder looking at me. So Ryan was set up on the chairlift looking back at us, and we did a few takes like that. He had to ride the chairlift up and around every time. Mm-hmm. And Evan, Robin, and I would ski down and then go back up.
Sweet. You get to go get some laps in.
Yeah, well, it was like this bunny hill.
Yeah.
And then we had extras. Yeah. Michelle Parker's brother is right behind us as one of our extras. And then there's like Palisades locals. One of the girls that came to my leisure camp, the one and only leisure camp I ever hosted, she's 2 chairs back. Like it's extras on the chairlift behind us as well, because we had to lap it like over and over. So we shot that the wide, and there's all this timing with the rollers of the chairlift of delivering lines and whatever. And then there's Ryan came and sat where I was.
Right.
And sat where Evan was and shot me.
Does Robin have to sit there
and
the whole
Robin
time?
had to sit in the center because she had this pink jacket that was like very
right, and
it had to kind of be in the foreground. So she's like this.
So Ryan's she had to do all the takes.
Yeah, she had to do all the takes. and then we ran out of time. And we went and did the final scene, and we didn't have Evan's over because when we filmed him, the sun was glaring on his face,
right,
and it looked incorrect based on the way the light was hitting me. So it looked like a different time of day.
Right.
And so Ryan had this brilliant idea that if we shot him going down the chairlift, delivering his monologue or his lines,
yeah,
and he tilted the camera
so it looked
slightly.
like you're going uphill.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And caught the light coming like a certain way, and I was just like, I didn't believe him. I didn't trust him, and I was tripping. I was like, it's not gonna work. It's gonna look wrong. It's not gonna work. It's gonna look wrong. He's like, trust me. I'm like, no, because then my background is the same as Evan's background. He's like, you have to trust me on this. Like, and I had this rule on set where I go, if you say to me, this is incorrect or this is correct, that's like the God term.
Yeah.
And he was like, if we shoot it this way, it's incorrect. If we shoot it this way, it's correct. And I was like, oh, you're using one. He's like, it's like using a veto power.
Yeah, nice.
I was like, oh, you're using one. He's like, I'm using one. I'm like, okay.
All
so
right.
then it was like, Evan had 1 take for his over. Final shot of the day, Ryan and Robin sitting between him, it's like the sun is setting, and I'm a chair behind him yelling my lines so that he can respond. But you're playing it to a matte box. Like you're playing it to the corner of the camera.
Right.
And channeling the emotion back to the person, like me yelling the lines up from behind.
Why wouldn't you just put like an earpiece in?
We don't have that kind of technology.
Just put an Apple earbud
I'm sure they
in
do that
and call them on the phone.
I'm sure
and be
they
like,
do that on lots of things.
And just call them and be like, so-and-so, why would you do that? Well.
I don't know. I mean, well, one for sound, it would like screw up sound, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure they do that in other products. Yeah. There's tons of workarounds for all this shit.
Right.
Anyway.
Have you seen that Instagram account, Shitty Rigs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, carry on.
Sorry. And so anyway, he nailed it in this like 1 take, and it was just like, yeah. And it's one of my favorite parts of his performance is that closing scene, because I was like thinking about it. I'm like, if this was just like a Hallmarky delivery, this would feel so lame.
Right.
And he does it in such a grounded way that he's almost like self-referential. And so is my character, like, oh, are you just going to come for a rom-com miracle? You know what I mean? It's self-referential of like how silly the scene is.
It's also, you brought that up because during the film, I'm like, what do you classify this? Is this a rom-com? I'm like, is it not? And then at the end, you actually say the words rom-com. I'm like, yeah.
I don't know if it's a rom-com. I mean, there was like a debate amongst the producing team about whether or not we wanted to call it a rom-com or not, because I think ultimately, and in press so far, there's been a lot of interest in the three women, like the three central girls,
right? And
it's more a story about them, and the sort of B story is the romance.
Yeah.
And so and like the ex-boyfriend and whatever. Yeah. So
but you need the romance in order to sell tickets and make a full well-rounded film for that.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
But there was a whole conversation at one point of like, you know, do we just nix the final scene and have it
have no resolution?
Have it end with the resolution of Cleo, my character, getting her shit going, getting her career going, you know, focusing on herself and getting out of her own way. And like when you look at the central themes of the film, like a big one is like being your own worst enemy,
right?
And getting out of your way.
And I guess it wouldn't have been too big a deal because it's not a central storyline, as you said. Like it's like you guys hooked up, and that's kind of what it was in a ski town.
Yeah.
And if it didn't go the way it was supposed to go, without giving too much away, I don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah, because it's not really about them.
Yeah.
It's like a fun thing that happens.
And then when he gets hit by the bus at the end too, like let's just throw a bunch of
Didn't
random
see that coming.
A bunch of random stuff.
I think like, I mean, the central story, I mean, obviously the central story is really about Cleo and her arc in terms of going from, you know, sort of like crippled with self-doubt and questioning everything and avoiding her own life and distracting herself and drinking and partying and not pursuing anything she genuinely cares about because she's too scared to fail, into stepping into this space unbeknownst to her. Maybe it was a string pulled, maybe not, who knows how she got there. She got there into this like rejection of self, into acceptance of life and her own life and embracing where you're at, recognize the community for what you have around you. Like her arc is the central story. Mm-hmm. And then the friendship factor and the romance factor and the villain factor of Dane Blake's character, they're all sort of they're like plot keyhole twisters to really this central story of this one woman. And really, like, she's an everyman in a lot of ways. Like, really her...
Every woman,
yeah. Her way of self-actualizing, I suppose.
Do you feel that... how do I say it? The exercise of writing this? Did it come from kind of... obviously, you write from what you know. Mm-hmm. But was it kind of like an autobiographical, maybe kind of... introspective therapy session sort of thing? Like these are a lot of, this is why this film's going to resonate, because a lot of us have lived that experience, right? You've lived that experience. You lived in ski towns. You've dealt with a lot of that kind of stuff. Was it kind of a cathartic exercise for you while you were writing it? Like,
oh yeah.
Do you see this and you're like, oof? Like when you were writing, you're like, do I put this in? Like, is this hitting too close to home? Like, were you concerned about?
I was
putting that out there.
I was.
Yeah,
for sure. I was really scared. And I've embraced, I suppose, having now screened it, you know, only a handful of times. Like it's just really starting to get out there. I've just embraced it sounds really cheesy, but like the strength in the vulnerability, or inherent to the vulnerability, because it is personal. And there's a lot of personal stuff that I brought to Cleo, as a character. And then there's also things that I brought, like very dear friends of mine, into Cleo, and seen their struggle and watched how they've moved through their lives in ski towns or wherever it might be. And I've brought them in, and I've worried about them having their feelings hurt.
And then being like, dude, man.
Triggered.
Like when you see that, when they watch it, they're like, did you write that about me?
Exactly.
Has that happened yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has. And the answer is kind of, yeah, because there are a lot of stereotypes, but they're amalgamations of stereotypes, and to create these sort of not semi-layered, but these layered characters, they're the girls' characters, like they're based off of amalgamations of friends of mine.
Mm-hmm.
The Gabe characters based off of amalgamations of guys I've hooked up with. All the characters have amalgamations of people I have met. And I've had multiple people be like, oh God, I don't like what I see here. Like, oh, I see what you're doing here. Is this person? Is this person? You know what I mean? Right. And you're like,
everybody's now watching and guessing. Yeah. You're like, is that you, dude? Like,
I mean, and that's just the nature of a personal story like that. I don't know about biographical or autobiographical because.
Well, maybe it just meant that you take, you take from your own experience.
You do. And being so involved in the entire creative process, like from writing, directing, and acting in it, like inevitably you're going to bring your own self into it. I just acted in a short film that I did not write or direct, and kind of realized in that process, like, oh, actually every time, and again, this is like speaking like so, naively, because I'm just so new to this narrative world in a lot of ways, but, you have to bring yourself into everything, and that's what makes it feel real. And when you like fall in love with your favorite actors or whatever, it's because you're falling in love with a real person. Like you don't actually love like, the Wolf of Wall Street character guy, like whatever his name is. You love the humanity that Leonardo DiCaprio brings to it, and you fall in love with like who Leonardo DiCaprio probably really is, or whatever it is. Like, and so grounding your performance in yourself is like what I've kind of started to understand. Like, oh, this is the difference between this like silly influencer brand content I do of like bike relationship comedy or like silly leisure skiing content. Like I'm just hiding. You can just like, Colleen's like, all right, we're rolling. I'm like, boom, 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 jokes.
Yeah.
It's so superficial versus like Cleo. I'm like, oh, I'm giving a truth to it.
Right.
Or bringing a truth of myself to it.
Right. Jeez. Well, so we got to get you out of here pretty soon.
Right.
We could easily talk for a couple hours. There's a lot more things I want to ask you about, but I'll get to a couple.
15 more minutes. We got 15 more minutes.
All right. We'll get to, we'll go for a little bit longer here. I want to make sure you have time for a snack. You got some media to do. You're a big Hollywood. Did you see the?
I did. That cracked me up. I didn't see it until this morning, actually, and then I made
because it kind of on our like appointment on the Google our Google calendar. What did I write?
You wrote like, I don't know. Anyway, it's funny.
No, Hollywood Big Shot.
Hollywood Big Shot.
Yeah. Meeting with Katie Burrell, LPP, and then it wasn't until you open it up. Yeah. It's just dash Hollywood Big Shot.
I wonder like if people aren't realizing what it was or is, or you know what I mean? Like, I think like people thought, oh, maybe it's going to be like Dream Job on steroids or something. You know what I mean? Right. Oh, sorry. I think people are thinking maybe, oh, it's Dream Job on steroids or something.
No, it's a proper film. It's a proper movie with a structure, like a 3-act structure. It's got a proper story arc. It's got evolving characters. It is a full proper film. Yeah. And just last week, I think you announced that it got picked up for distribution. Is that correct? Yeah. So what does that mean? Explain that to us, because that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. It's huge. Greenwich Entertainment, they're actually the same distribution company that distributed Free Solo. Okay. So they've had like a proven track model with like this outdoor space or whatever, and kind of understand the sort of nuances of releasing to those kind of audiences. Mm-hmm. In that, yes, we're distributing, and so a distribution company basically, from what I'm learning, again, drinking out of a firehouse, what's a distribution? They're like a middleman between theaters and the production company. Yeah. And like the owner of the
they're the
IP.
people. They're the company that gets people in butts in seats and gets the movie shown.
So it's like marketing,
right? And
it's like releasing trailers, coordinating with. We have a PR team as well called MPRM Communications. They're like pitching to Deadline and Variety and Bustle and Cosmo and New York Times and what they're coordinating that effort, morning shows or whatever it is, and then the Greenwich does the booking. So they pick where they think it should be.
Right.
And then there's all these rules where...
So they may not be screening it in like, Nebraska, Kansas, but Denver and Boston and New York and Utah and Washington State, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it's going to go to all the major U.S. markets, New York, LA, Dallas, Seattle, San Francisco. And then it's also, they're making a real effort to get it into as many ski town or like towns with that kind of culture theaters as possible, which is like Salt Lake, Denver, Portland, Vancouver. Yeah, there's Vancouver, Calgary, and then right down to like Jackson Hole, Aspen, Revelstoke, Tahoe, Taos, like they're looking at all those places as well. And there's a spreadsheet that has like 250 theaters on it that these guys are just systematically reaching out to, working through, booking. It's a huge job.
Right. And does that mean more money in your pocket? Because people are buying tickets? Is that do they have to pay you for the rights to distribute this film?
So I don't own this film. Like no. I was like a hired gun on this film.
Okay.
I have like a percentage that I will make. Once there's like all these sort of like trigger points. There's like, if the money does this, I get a payout like this. If the movie does this, then I get a payout like this. And then if the movie continues to do XYZ, I get a payout like this.
And then when it goes to streaming.
Yeah. So then it'll go to streaming.
See how we tied that back in
February.
We talked about that like an hour ago.
Project management software in your brain. It goes to streaming February 6th. It goes to theaters January 5th. There has to be like a 30-day run before streaming.
Right.
If there's a theatrical release. And so...
Have they picked a streamer yet? A streaming platform?
So the way that streaming will work, it's like SVOD or like TVOD.
I don't know what that is.
It's like streaming video on demand or TV on demand.
Video on demand, yeah.
So it'll be on Prime.
Amazon Prime. Yep. And
it'll be on iTunes or like Apple TV.
Okay.
So you can watch it in either of those capacities. Like you can purchase it.
Right. For like 24 hours or for full on.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm assuming there'll be a rental option as well.
Yeah.
But it's like all the movies. Like when you go to your Amazon Prime, and then there's still an opportunity for like a deal or deals with if Hulu, but it's not like outright purchasing anymore. It's like profit sharing or like licensing.
Right.
So there's like they license it to screen it here for 2 years, or it goes to Netflix for 2 years for X amount of dollars, or some sort of profit sharing scenario, or I don't know. Frankly, I'm like sort of removed from this conversation. I'm like I'm being asked to be at certain places at certain dates and times and
show up
and dog and pony show it, and then like the producers and the distributors are really handling the money.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
That's good. You just find out later and hope you don't get ripped off.
I mean, for me, like any dollar I make on this thing is going to be like a crazy bonus. It's just and
it's funny, go back to what you were talking about when you were like put yourself in debt to go through coach. Sometimes you gotta take that leap of faith, and look what's happening now.
I mean, my entire life since I quit working 9 to 5 has been an investment in myself, and I will say investing in myself, and I will say there is a lot of fatigue that I currently have in investing in myself. I really really want something to just like scoop me up and like take me on, like the way I would just like bend over backwards, just like book a role on a TV show for like a year or so. Do you know what I mean? Like just be taken care of for a little while, but I don't know how possible, I don't know how likely that is.
Well, it's
like,
kind of happening now with what's happening in this distribution deal. They're coming to you and they're picking you up.
Yeah.
It's happening now.
You're right.
It's
really
happening.
Interesting. It's just like the I've been like weepy. I've been like really weepy. Like I'm just like I'm really tired,
emotionally exhausted,
because
you put so much work into yourself, and I find when I get to that point where I start that weepiness is because you're almost at the finish line is maybe the wrong word, maybe for this film, but you've put so much energy and effort and emotion, and it's affected relationships and your bank account, and you've learned so much. It's just so this overwhelming chapter is getting near the end.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the time where this stuff starts to kind of like bleed in, and it's almost like your body and your mind understands like, I can relax this much.
Oh,
and
that's really...
maybe I can relax this much a little bit.
That's really interesting.
And then it's like, it's all going to come out. I can almost guarantee, and I'm the same way, I guarantee there's going to be a point in time where something's just going to happen, you're just going to break down.
It's happened.
Right?
I've had like multiple breakdowns, and it's been really interesting to me.
The release.
Totally, but I'm like, why aren't you more like excited or feeling like more sparkly?
Right.
With this, like, this is the moment. This is what it was for. Now you get to share it with this audiences, and they're having fun watching it. Thank fucking God. You know what I mean? Like
right.
The relief you feel that audiences, because if it was gonna be like, the conversation was gonna be like, what was your first film, Katie? Like, you had to learn somewhere, like,
right.
Or like, well, this was good, or this was good, or like this part. Like, I'm not having those conversations, which means that it's actually good.
Right.
Which is so relieving.
Right.
And that's as a result of the team that came together on it. Like, right. Jared said, he's like, he's worked in film forever. He's like, I've never been on a team like this good, like solid.
Because you come at it from a non-traditional point of view.
Yeah, and
a non-traditional place.
Totally.
Which is awesome.
Yeah. But I just am like, putting it out so far, like, I've never been as nervous as I was introducing it at Banff at its premiere. And I've done stand-up for 1,000, right. I'm like,
we didn't even get into stand-up. I bet you that had a lot to do with the writing.
I was like shaking. I was like physically shaking, introducing it on the first night. And
because you did it. Look what we got. We did it.
We did it.
We got here.
We did it.
People have seen it. They're sitting. We're done.
Yeah.
Well,
and then
done,
just sitting
done.
there, my heart pounded through that entire first screening. It pounded like I got a workout. And I was just like, every time they laughed, I was like, it was like the wildest feeling of just relief and elation. And
are you able to?
Then you're just like sad. It's like anticlimactic at the same time
because it's over and it's empty. You're like, oh. Are you able to absorb the compliments and the praise?
I get a little squirrely with compliments and praise. I'll be honest. Like I do. I get a little squirrely with it because I think my most elemental nature is just, I'm a worker.
Yeah.
Like, I like to work. I like to be working. I like to be in motion. I like to be one foot in front of the other. I'm not a big, it's sort of contrary to the way that I present, but
you're not in it for the accolades.
I'm not really a spectacle person. I'm like I'm a Capricorn. We're goats, one foot in front of the other up the mountain. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And I'm also like, yes, I love an audience. I've always loved an audience. I've always loved to perform. But I don't really think that has been because I love attention, although I do. Yeah. It's like I like to make people feel good.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more about them. I'm like, did you like it?
Yeah.
You had fun?
Yeah.
Did you like it? You felt good? Did you laugh? Like, it's less about like, I did this thing.
Right. You're doing, yeah, it's not for you. It's not for me. It's for them. Yeah, I'm very similar in a similar way. Like when you get on a microphone, I tell people, I had a buddy that was at IF3 and he's like, I've never seen you do that before. Like, whoa. I'm like, when you put a microphone in my hand, I'm in front of a crowd.
Sure.
It's my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And I think you're kind of in that same place where it's like, oh, they're all about the attention, all that kind of stuff. No, it's just about the
connection,
and then being able to that's like you have so much creative energy built up, and it's almost like a Care Bear stare, direct focus, like hyper focused, like huge release that sometimes you just need to get out. Like after I do something like that, I'm mellow, and I'm like, I got it all out. I'm good for a while, right? And it's like people, hey, that was really cool. I'm like, thanks. That feels weird for you saying that, but I've gotten to a point where I can say, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Right. But that's not why I do it. It's because you just have to create. You have to
create. I've needed to create my entire life, but I will also say like the thing that I have been able to absorb is the like, look at what is possible if you don't give up. Yeah. And people keep saying that to me. Like you said it to start the conversation. You're like, and people in this small sort of microcosm of watching me kind of grow up or whatever, like within the ski and you know,
just
maybe
evolve into this.
It's like that's from just never giving up.
Yeah,
like that's from 7 condensed years of not giving up, or 6. Right. You know what I mean? Like on yourself. And so I'm more absorbing that. I'm like, okay, if that's what has come together in this many years of what else am I going to be able to experience in this lifetime as a result. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's more what I'm like. But for me, I'm always like, what's next? What's the next thing? What's the next thing I can sink my teeth into?
I love it.
You know.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next.
I'm too. I'm curious.
Well, we'll get you back in when the next thing happens.
Great. Love it. Thank you for
Thanks,
having
Katie.
me.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to the Low Pressure Podcast, the podcast for skiers. This has been a Redmark Media production.